Welcome to your Daily 5 for Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. As part of a double feature for the, at least as of this recording, most recent episode of the Forgotten Movie Den with filmmaker Len Kabasinski, one of the films that I watched for that double feature was from 1988, and it is titled Night Wars. This is a film directed by David A. Pryor, who B-movie fans will probably know from many of his other movies, and is released under the American International Pictures label, which is also probably something that most B-movie fans are familiar with. But I have to tell you, this is a movie that, if you read about it and if you see the names associated with it, you probably think you know what you're going to get into. But I can promise you that this movie is unlike anything that David Pryor or AIP typically put out, in that it feels like a movie that was made with a serious message or intent behind it. Now, I don't want to overpromise too much. It still is a David Pryor film. It still shows a clearly restricted budget. There are going to be times in the movie where you see things that do not look all that great. There is limited use of sets. Some of the acting is far better than some of the other acting. But when you get to the end of it, and I'm not going to talk about any spoilers, even though this is a retro review, and normally with retro reviews now I don't really worry about spoilers. I'm going to save that for Len's episode, because I think in particular the ending is worth discussing, but it's not the only element. But just overall, this movie feels like it is made very differently than most other AIP and David Pryor pictures, because the basic story, without giving anything away, is about two Vietnam veterans who, after the war, are trying to live, past that conflict, and they are having a lot of trouble adjusting. They're having nightmares. Some of those nightmares are starting to affect their waking lives, and they start to suspect that maybe some of the things that they thought were done and finished and left behind in the war are not quite so finished after all. Now, that's a very, very surface level synopsis of the movie, because again, I don't want to give anything away. You can find more if you actually read the summary over on IMDb or Letterboxd or something like that, but I'm going to keep it at that level. But there, as the movie was going on, already starting anything Vietnam is tricky because, if you do something that's just base and exploitative of it, or a base exploitation picture, better way to phrase it, you can really alienate people. You have to be careful with material that, specifically Vietnam, but really any war that deals with veterans, PTSD, the trauma from war. And so when I started watching this, I really wasn't sure where it was going to go. I thought, oh boy, this could end up being a real crass cash-in thing where it was just, again, exploiting certain well-known public elements of the war and what it did to soldiers. But by the end, I have to say, I would be very curious, and I haven't found really any information on this, and I think Len is in the same boat, where there's not much information on this movie, but I would legitimately be curious where this movie came from, meaning what was the thinking behind making it, because it feels, even if it doesn't necessarily in the production live up to its aspirations, in terms of the themes that it's wrestling with and some of the things it appears to be saying, it's an interesting film. It actually had me thinking about specifically the ending, but of course that reflects on all the events that came before. And it ends in a way that is not as clean or simple or basic as you might expect from a picture of this type. It really does make you think in terms of morality, in terms of how we view the main character. All the events of the film do add up to this interesting thing at the end, which I think is far greater than the film overall. Technically, it is a low-budget David Pryor film. You are going to see the seams in the production. There's just no way around it. It's just the way that it is, both because of who made it and how it was made. But I don't think that those basic constraints are a reason to not see the film. I would recommend actually watching this movie because, again, it feels like whether it was Pryor or somebody else or whoever was involved in this, it feels like they were trying to tackle difficult things in a movie and a type of movie that typically wouldn't delve that deeply into this subject matter. And I think that makes it worth seeing and it makes it unique. So it's on Tubi. You can watch it for absolutely nothing. You don't have to pay a dime for it. It's not in the greatest quality, but I don't think there is a really good quality version of this movie around, although that should probably be rectified. I would say that somebody should remaster this and try to do some type of research on where it came from, because again, 1988's Night Wars, it's not going to be the best Vietnam War movie you've ever watched, but for what it is, it will probably stick with you. Later.